back. We're going to begin once again with a meditation. And I would invite you to get comfortable. Put away anything that might be preventing you from just relaxing fully, your notepads and everything for now. So excited for session 4. And as we're getting settled and ready to begin our final session, allow yourself to just be fully present in this time, in this space. We're going to once again embody our infinite self as we return to our true identity, journeying from the body, from your mind, from your limited concept of who you are, back to your eternal, infinite beingness. Each time we journey in this meditation, it becomes more natural, easier to fully embody, and easier to return to. The seat of infinite beingness from which all is manifest. With your eyes closed, take a few deep breaths. Breathing fully in with a nice soft belly, in and out. In and out. Focus your attention inward toward your heart center, connecting with the presence, the spirit, the aliveness here. Noticing it's pure, it's peaceful, it's complete. It's unchanging. It's infinite. And in this silence, just simply observe. Feel this presence as a radiant mass of light, a ball of energy, eternally shining at the center of your soul. Feel it growing and getting larger and larger until it engulfs you so fully that you are at the center of its eternal glow. Feel this light radiating from you in all directions, encompassing your consciousness and your body. Radiating out with you at the center, encompassing all that is in existence. And notice that all of existence is now projecting from the center of your soul, from the very center of you. You are the source and expression of it all. All of your present circumstances, everything in your awareness, it is you who projects it all. Notice how from this place, nothing is impossible. It is you who gives life to the entirety of existence. Everything you encounter is simply your light projecting outward. Allow yourself to bask in your infinite self. And bring this awareness into our present reality as you breathe in feeling the fullness of your being infused into this reality and this body, into your human experience. As you remain eternally still, peaceful, and complete, with your beingness at the center of it all, we're going to bring this state of infinite power back into this present moment as you become aware of your fingers, your toes wiggling slightly. Become aware of your body as you breathe fully in, feeling your belly and your lungs and your ribs expand. Bringing this awareness that is the seat of your beingness fully into your body, truly embodying your power. Allow yourself to stretch and feel your body. Begin to open your eyes. Notice that there's energy that comes with this that can bring you a sense of aliveness. Bring that right back with you into this place, into this time. Opening your eyes, feeling refreshed and energized. Welcome back. How is everybody? I hope you're simultaneously feeling refreshed, renewed, relaxed, and energized. I think we can be all things at the same time. So excited for this last session. This has been an incredibly dynamic weekend. Feeling so appreciative for everybody here. Very, very thankful for this massive transformation that we're able to experience in such a short amount of time. Thank you, Michael, for leading us and guiding us and allowing us to have this experience.
What an experience it's been, huh? You know, I think about the I Am experience, which is our other flagship product. And a lot of you have been through that. And, you know, the I Am experience was created as with the direct intention to find the most efficient way to default to the top state, right? Because we knew even if you still practice techniques, you have an understanding that your state of consciousness affects reality. And ultimately, when we designed the I Am experience, you know, it was designed with the intention to help you understand, you know, not the top state, but understand that you are the source that produces the top state. And so when I look at these two products in tandem, you know, I see a really interconnected journey, because I feel like bending reality is its focus here is to help you understand the mechanics of reality so that you might manipulate them, right? Use the word manipulate lightly. The I Am experience is all about identity. And the truth is both go hand in hand, right? We not only need to know who we are, we need to know how to leverage what we are to proactively get where we want to go, you know. And I'm just super appreciative of all the meditation we've done this weekend. You know, I feel like meditation is honestly, conscious intentional meditation is one of the greatest ways to habitually practice zero density states, to be honest with you. Like genuine meditation, really deep breath focused meditation eventually does produce those heightened states of consciousness. And so that's why I love what we're going to be talking about, what we're going to be diving into in session 4. We're going to be getting into the activation. So if you have a pair of headphones, okay, grab them. You don't need to put them in now. We'll let you know. But we will be performing the quantum technology activation here soon. But the reason why I'm so excited about this is because it crosses the bridge between meditation and intentional state alteration. And what we've done with our quantum technology activation is build binaural beta, delta, alpha, and theta frequencies with a dominant theta fringe, along with bringing in some of replications of some of the most powerful hypnosis techniques, including tapping, singing bowls, mantras, and more. So I'm very excited for you guys to immerse yourself in this today. And ultimately, what we're going to be talking about in session 4 is ultimately the protocol, how to discuss it. But before we dive into that, I want to back up for a second, right? I want to go way back to yesterday morning, maybe even Friday night. When we started, we really began to discuss how reality works. We discussed where things happen, why things happen, why attempting change from realm 4 is so much harder than attempting change from realm 1. We've talked about a lot of different things, but the one thing that I think is probably the most important thing that we have not touched a lot on is the necessity of commitment. You know, there's a statement that I've been somewhat resonating with lately. And the statement is that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And I want to break that down. And I don't want to use those words here, but the way I interpret this in relation to what we're doing is conscious intentional effort beats out happenstance when happenstance doesn't remain consistent, right? Here's the thing. You could start this process today after this retreat and start manifesting millions. It's not a joke. What's going to determine the success you have with what you integrate today is your willingness to commit to the zero density state. And what that means is you have to be willing to take the courage to acknowledge when you are telling yourself or getting emotionally or physiologically involved in a story that is counter to the zero density state. See, we don't have problems meditating. We don't have problems shifting our state. Where most of us run into problems is when we get into a moment of contrast, and it's easier to respond through the lens of separation than it is to take charge of our own power, simply because responding through the lens of separation has been so habitual for us for so long. And I will tell you this, I can guarantee 110% that if you do not commit to the zero density state fully, and you do commit to continuing to respond to things through the lens of separation, you will not see progress. Awareness, we talked about this on Instagram a couple of weeks ago. Self-awareness is one of the greatest things that you can cultivate as a skill when it comes to manifesting. Because again, you are the vehicle that's already moving. Your job is to optimize inflow, outflow, gas flow, oil flow, power flow, right? The car's already built. It's already rolling. You've already got the structure. You've already got the engine. You've already got the motor. Your job is to optimize how this car goes from A to B, and not only how it goes from A to B, but how it goes from A to C, and A to F, and A to L, and A to Z. I got hair in my mouth, I'm sorry. And so today, this last session, as we're leaving here, it'll probably pass as quickly as the other ones have. I can't believe we've already been in this for almost 8 hours collectively, including Friday night, actually 8 hours at this point, including Friday. What we want to do today is introduce you to our dematerialization process. It is probably the most advanced technique that we have developed to this date, but really what the dematerialization process is a simple recalibration to zero density state. Sound fair enough? So let's dive in. Let me go ahead and get my screen up. Make sure I don't, share my Discord channel. Okay, good stuff. So ultimately here, what we want to discuss is a specific process for embodying the zero density state. It's time to bend reality. Right? The time is right. The price is right. It's all right. So actionable distillations for this process. My true nature is source, awareness, consciousness, which is the source and substance of everything. What's our biggest problem? We get caught up in identifying as all the things. What I experience is determined solely by what I hold in consciousness. And I would add on to that and say how I experience what I experience is determined by my fundamental self-concepts. Because my fundamental self-concepts and the meaning I've assigned literally are the Instagram filter of my consciousness. They are the lens from which I will see other people interacting. It's so interesting. One of Dave and my's teachers that honestly was probably the connector for us both way back in 2017. His name is Mr. 2020. A lot of you know who he is. He has an amazing course called Manifesting Mastery, and I just plugged another guy's course on our retreat. And I'll tell you what, Manifesting Mastery is amazing. And there's one lesson where he's talking about meaning specifically, and he brings up the example of a boy walking by a group of girls that are laughing, right? Here's the thing. That boy is going to draw a conclusion based on the meaning he has assigned for himself, right? What he believes to be true about himself in that moment. And ultimately the meaning he's assigned to a group of girls laughing. What's so interesting here is that if you switch those two variables around, if you substitute them, right, the boy will feel embarrassed because he thinks they're laughing at him because he just generally has a low concept of himself, right? The assumption is made based on the meaning he's assigning in that moment. But if that person, if that boy had full self-confidence, was walking by those girls that were laughing, the chance of that response becomes minimal. Chances, honestly, probably for a multitude of factors, we're really going to simplify this boy's personality, okay? Probably wouldn't be affected, right? Wouldn't take it as something personal, right? The whole aspect of getting into that state of self-judgment, it all comes down to how he is interpreting himself in relation to the situation at hand. And then the meaning he's assigning about the variables involved in the situation. And I love that ultimately because how he holds himself in consciousness determines how he responds to those people around him, right? How he holds himself and the meaning he assigns for himself in relation to that variable specifically affect how he interprets and then biochemically responds to that. Because think about that. He responds negatively. He feels, oh man, they're laughing at me. I'm ugly, right? I was that boy at one point. They're laughing at me. I'm ugly. And all of a sudden, what has happened? I've allowed that to trip me up and I'm sitting in the space of feeling ugly about myself. And then literally that is going to filter everything that I see and experience. If I'm walking through the park, everything that I see and experience will be filtered through that lens. I'll see something happening. I'll immediately start telling myself a story that reflects the self-concept that I'm carrying in relation to what I'm seeing. What I experience is determined solely by what and how I hold myself and everything else in consciousness. Holding a state and a feeling of total perfection while surrendering the details to source, in other words, the responsibility, will express perfection in all areas of life. And this is the question I have if we're going to take Neville serious when he says that each desire comes with a plan of its own fulfillment. Why do I need to figure out the details? I don't. I need to live in the zero density state and allow the details to fulfill themselves. And as long as I'm trying to take control over the details, as long as I'm trying to condition the details, I mean, think about it. If a desire has its own plan of fulfillment and I have no idea what that plan is, and I start trying to say, well, this should be how it happens. Well, this could be how it happens. Well, this could be how it happens. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I will definitely tell you that it cuts off your flow. Trying to rationalize and trying to make sense of it, of how it's going to happen, it really messes up your flow, because you've gone from being in a flow state, a zero density state, a unified state, to now a separated state. Well, how's this going to happen? How am I going to make this happen? Who am I going to get this help from? Who's going to do this? What's going to happen here? What if this doesn't happen? Well, what happens if this happens? Do I have to do this? It's like, dude, are we done? Are we done? Can we not just commit to the zero density state without needing to rationalize everything? Holding a state and feeling of total perfection while surrendering the details to source will express perfection in all areas of life. All I need to do is allow perfection to exist and it will manifest. And I love how the way this is worded here, right? We're talking about, threw me off, Doug. All I need to do is allow perfection to exist. And what's interesting here is when we talk about allowing perfection to exist, right? Because here's the thing, we do consent to what we are believing to be true about ourselves. We consent, we give agreement, we give weight, we give okayance, we give consent, right? We're consenting to everything that we believe to be true about ourselves. So technically here, I can walk myself through the process of consenting to perfection. But here's the thing, as long as I'm trying to look at this from a bottom-up perspective and not a top-down perspective, in other words, as long as I'm trying to look at reality from a level 4 to a level 0, or a realm 4 to realm 0 perspective, instead of a realm 0 to realm 4, it's going to be really hard for me to see perfection. I mean, think about it. You and I could see a school of fish that are in perfect harmony. They're in perfect, spatial distances. I mean, they're just moving. Or birds. Birds are another example. From the outside, we obviously see the beauty of this school of fish or this bird. I don't know what a pack of birds, I don't know what they're called, but the formation, that they're creating, right? But imagine then going to the consciousness of one of the fish or one of the birds in that process. They're probably not aware of how it looks. I mean, okay, maybe they're aware of how it looks on the outside, but in that moment, right, they see a bunch of seemingly different fish swimming around them. They don't see the entire order that we see. And that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a top-down perspective. We're looking at the form and fashion of things through the lens of a higher consciousness. We're looking at forms and fashions through the lens of the creator. Everywhere I go, what did David say? There you are. In this speak, everywhere I go, there I am. Everywhere I go, there I am. I mean, is there anything we can observe without placing I before the observation? I really don't think that there is. I don't think that there's anything that we can observe without first saying, I am observing, which is really interesting, right? We go back to the double slit experiment. Multitudes of variables affect how the light scatters on the wall, right? Not only the form and fashion from which the light is pushed through, but then an interference field that scatters the light. What's really interesting too is if you take acoustic resonance and you look at like water and you look at, again, the Resonance Science Foundation on Instagram, they're amazing, Nassim Haramein. What they do is they do a lot of experiments with resonating frequencies in water. So they'll put different frequencies from a subwoofer and they'll put water on the subwoofer and they'll watch as different frequencies causes the water to take different shapes. It's one of the most amazing things ever. But I think that is so, considering these bodies, you know what they are? The majority of water, 70% water. Think about that. Think about how easy water can be manipulated and shaped with the right tools. Water literally retains memory. You know, I'm not a big fan, we've talked about this, right? You know, I'm not a big fan of the pouring the water into the future cup, but I did see an experiment, I don't know how long ago, where there were two cups of water. One was spoken to with love and kindness, and one was spoken to with anger, bitterness, all those tonalities. And there was actually a significant change in the chemical bonding of the water on a subatomic level when it was examined under a microscope after the experiment was done, which is probably one of the most amazing things that, right? Water literally retains memory. And our bodies are 70% water. I don't know, man, right? Think about what happens when we get into meditation, when we put those theta frequencies on. Literally, I showed Dave the meditation for today, the activation, and he was like, dude, I'm literally vibrating. Of course. So let's do an exercise together, right? Let's explore what perfection means to you, right? If your life, and this is really a double entendre, more about understanding where you are with perfection than anything else. If your life and your world were perfect, what would it look like? I just want you to think about this for a second. We'll move on. What would it feel like? Right? If everything was exactly what you thought you wanted. Perfect. What would it look like? What would it feel like? What would be the inner dialogue that you're carrying around in the day when you're not doing anything? When you're not doing anything, not when you're doing stuff, what would be the narrative? What would be the worldview that you'd be walking around with when nothing was going on? And I say that specifically because when we are at rest, the consciousness that we are is so much more potent because of the law of least action, the law of least effort. So what we return to when we are not active, and this is just honestly a bullet point you should write down to remember, the state of consciousness that we default to when we are not being stimulated is the closest to our fundamental self-concept. If you want to really figure out what your deepest beliefs are about yourself, make the intention to become mindful of when you're sitting on your couch doing nothing and just paying attention to what goes through your brain, how you're interpreting what needs to get done, how you're interpreting your relationship, if you're married, if you've got a husband, a wife, right? If you've got a specific job that you know you have to maybe not do then, but do later or do the next day. Really think about how you're interpreting what is available for you in the moment. But ultimately, going back to our exercise here, exploring perfection, right? If your life and world were perfect, what would that be? What would that be at rest, right? What would you be saying to yourself? How would you be engaging with yourself when nothing else was going on? Of course, when things are going on as well, right? You're going out your day, you're driving, you're headed out to the outlet mall, it's going to go pick up that new Michael Kors purse, whatever you're going to do. If your life and world were perfect, what would it look like? Ultimately, this is the single state of consciousness that manifests all desires automatically. We're really looking at a top state here, a zero density state, because the expression of perfection is all desires manifested. That's why if you can just hold on to the state of perfection, you will inadvertently see everything manifested. It just makes sense. Flock. There you go. Thanks, Ro. I can always count on Rohith, bro. You're so smart. It's ridiculous. I love it. Because the expression of perfection is all desires manifested, right? So this means that as I perceive myself and my life to be perfect, what might be lacking comes into view, right? What does Neville say about our states of consciousness? When we shift a state of consciousness, we're not generating things that didn't exist. We're simply revealing something that already was. We are not creating from scratch. We are revealing what already is. And I think that's super important to understand, and let's do some drawing really quickly so we can really. So a lot of people, I'm going to get closer. A lot of people think that they're this, and they think that their stuff is over here, and they have to attract it. Let me use my oogly boogly eyes to attract my $1 million, right? This is how most people think about manifestation. They think that they have to attract something that's outside of themselves. And then on top of that, they think that the thing isn't even built yet. They think that they have to do it from scratch. In other words, they have to take a bunch of stuff from nothing and turn it into something, as opposed to moving your consciousness into the zero density state where perfection exists and watching each of these as they organize themselves in the perfect way, because we cannot help but get exactly what we are, right? The attraction factor is not in what you're doing to make it happen or the responsibility that you shoulder to make something come to pass. The attraction factor, the ultimate attraction factor, right? We're talking, you want to have millions, you want to have mansions, you want to have businesses, you want to have all the good stuff. The attraction factor is in your ability to return to the zero density state of perfection and allow perfection to reorganize, outpicture itself in the world around you. And this is what we mean when we're talking about perspective. When we're talking about perfection. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat. Good stuff. All right. For those of you that may be joining on the phone, Yes, I was drawing on my whiteboard. Okay, because the expression of perfection is all desires manifested. Good stuff. Because source is infinite intelligence, it knows your every desire. Really think about this. If who you really are is beyond time, right? If the source consciousness that you are literally exists at the end of time, exists at the beginning of time, and exists among every point in time that could be quantified in time, technically, the consciousness that you are knows any desire that will ever come upon you for the rest of your life. Literally, because the consciousness that you are exists outside of time. So literally, all of your desires are already known. That's a really interesting way to look at this. Because if I look at this in that all of my desires are not only already known, if they're already known, they must be predestined. If my desires are already known, they must be predestined. Who cares about why? Who cares why? If my desires are already known, they must be predestined. And so, what's the best way to align myself with that predestination? And think about this. Really, and some people will be like, what? Predestination? Think about the things that you're the most passionate about. The things that you are the most passionate about are things that you would probably consider a calling, a destiny. And they're connected to exactly where you are right now. Connected to where you were when you were a little girl or a little boy. Otherwise, how would you even sense them? And if the consciousness that you are is outside of time, meaning it was at the end of your life before you were even thought of, how could your desires not be predestined to come to pass? That's the reality of this, and that's how powerful you are. And what I've noticed here is a lot of the times, honestly, even when we decide to be a stickler to ourselves, we still get what we want. And when I say what we want, I mean what we really believe to be true. I think most of us, deep down, the connection to our desires is somewhat divine. And I'm not talking about quantified material desires. I'm talking about deep passions, deep callings. Those are the things that you are meant to do with your life. The things that you think about doing that light you up, that you immediately see a version of yourself 20 years from now doing, those are the things you need to be focusing on. Because I can guarantee you everything else that you want is literally going to complement that. When I look at my deepest passions, and then I look at my life goals as far as like finances, acquisition of wealth, right, possessions, life dynamics and structures, almost every subtle nuance of my life, when I look at my deeper passion and I look at myself doing that completely fulfilled, being totally successful, everything that I've wanted on a nuancial level, the money that I want, the house that I want, the relationship dynamic that I want, all of those things come as a byproduct if I give myself permission to pursue that deep calling. Almost all of my goals, almost all of them, up until this point, especially starting this company 6 years ago, almost all of my goals on a life level came to pass as a result of me and Dave building Reality Hacker. I got the Tesla, I got the house, I got the multiple houses, I got the traveling, I got the relationships, I got the freedom to do what I want when I want. Now, granted, there was some room for modification, and there still is. But in pursuing the thing that I felt most deeply connected to and called to from a zero density state as much as possible, I've inadvertently made so many of my life goals. And I know Dave can say the same exact thing. You know, when Dave started this company, literally met him within weeks, and we decided to become co-founders. But when Dave started this company, he had just left his life of manifesting. You know, Dave had and has land in Costa Rica, one of the most beautiful infinity pools on the planet, overlooks the ocean, right? He had a Porsche. He sold the Porsche to move to Costa Rica. But then a couple of years after building Reality Hacker, he bought an R8. bought a dream house in Big Bear. His house in Big Bear is fucking amazing. Absolutely gorgeous, right? He has the Model Y. All of his goals, his life goals, were fulfilled by pursuing his passion here. And I say that to say that ultimately we want to access the zero density state as much as possible. Most of the time, the things that we're passionate about, if we immerse ourselves in them, they take us to that zero density state. I can honestly tell you that in the very creation of this retreat, most of it was zero density state. If not all of it, honestly. Holding a consciousness of perfection allows Source to work through you without effort. Isn't this amazing, folks? Isn't this so wonderful? Isn't it amazing that I can just make a movement in consciousness and see a movement in the world? Isn't it amazing that I can relinquish responsibility to make everything happen? Knowing that I am the totality of the universe experiencing itself subjectively. And that as I surrender to that perfection surrenders itself to me. That's hot. As I surrender myself to perfection, perfection surrenders itself to me. You don't need to concern yourself with identifying desire or managing the details. You are not the micromanager of the universe. How freeing. You don't need to micromanage your manifestations. There you go. That's going on Instagram later. And honestly, the more you micromanage and Karen, no offense to anybody named Karen, your desires, you will continue to be frustrated. There's no pleasing the lady that just needs to call the manager all the time. I've been that lady. And that's why we go back to being content with nothing. Appreciative for any love, blessing, abundance, service received. We don't want to become rich snobs. We want to be rich servants. Right? And not just with money. Right? That's the question I have. You want to be rich? Are you acting rich? And I'm not talking about self-sabotage where you give yourself to everybody at the expense of yourself, because really rich people don't do that. I'm talking about, are you acting rich? Are you living richly? Are you fully immersing yourself in this experience? Are you being shallow? Are you living distantly? Are you living in the past and the future in places that are irrelevant to where you are right now? My people, you don't need to concern yourself with being the micromanager of the universe. Simply allow perfection to unfold, and you allow perfection to unfold by maintaining a state of perfection. I mean, think about, you guys, maybe you didn't, maybe you did, you saw Harry Potter, right? One thing about Harry Potter is in the castle, a lot of the staircases, they're movable, and some of them even fold together like an accordion, right? What's so interesting, the way I look at this is imagine a moving staircase or an accordion. I think accordion is going to be a better example here. You know, when I enter into a state of perfection, the accordion of that perfection begins to open up. But the moment I become double-minded and step into fear, all of a sudden I squeeze that accordion back down, and then I begin to reopen it back through the lens of that fear. Literally, every time I step into a new state of consciousness, I'm snapping that accordion back. Could have been stretching and its contents expanding, but instead I chose to snap back to fear, and then it begins to open under that lens, right? We talk about allowing perfection to unfold. The expansion is a natural part of an accordion's purpose, right? Expansion is a natural part of your purpose. Literally, as a human, being consciousness, experiencing itself, which on a macro level is still expanding, folks. The universe is still expanding. Your job here is to maintain that state of perfection and allow yourself to expand at the rate, I mean, at least at the rate of speed in which the universe is expanding, which really, I think is like 19 miles a minute. I could be wrong. I'm not sure, right? But I want to give myself perfection, the room to expand without needing to worry about the details. There you go. Thanks for sharing that picture, Vanessa. Because our true nature is source, ultimately the only thing that blocks desires from manifesting is mental distortion, which creates density, right? What is distortion? The distortion is a manipulation of a signal. If you look at, remember the old TVs from, I mean, honestly, I think these existed even, well, some people now have them as novelties, but the TVs that you had to change the dial and you had to use the antenna and there was static if you didn't have it right. You all have heard this example when it comes to vibrational resonance, all that good stuff, right? Mental distortion, right? The more I am creating a bunch of chatter, the more I'm rationalizing my desire, the more I'm trying to condition it, the more I'm trying to control it, the more I'm trying to micromanage it, the less in tune I am with the frequency itself. And as a result, as I'm trying to change the dial, there's a lot of static showing up. And the truth is, I don't know about you, but I don't want to watch The Flash with a bunch of static distortion on the TV. I'd prefer 4K UHD visuals. You know what I mean? I'd love to watch my life play out on the screen of space with clarity. And this is why the only true thing that blocks us from manifesting is mental distortion. And this is why, in a lot of ways, people that we would call narcissistic are so successful at manifesting. Because most of the time, narcissistic people are incapable of perceiving another, or at least to a degree where it triggers their empathetic glands. Right? People get upset because narcissistic people tend to get exactly what they want, but this is the reason, because this law, here's the thing, folks, this law is not biased. It doesn't reward you based on how many Hail Marys you've said in the last 2 weeks. It rewards you based on where you are right the F now. Exactly. And that's exactly why we had you do the exercise on Friday about making space for alignment. So here's how we want to transmute density into perfection. So we're going to start walking through our dematerializing process, and then we're going to get into the meditation. So prepare to plug in your headphones, okay? So we're talking about transmuting density into perfection. Density is experienced as heaviness, resistance, overwhelm, limitation, contraction, fear, effort, lack, worry, meaning, mental chatter, right? It is a distortion of your perfect source nature. The dematerializing process works as such, okay? When you feel density, you are mistaking a thing to be solidly real, to be limited, or to have some sort of meaning that does not work in your favor. We want to use this process to remove density and transmute the thing into perfection. Ultimately, step one, we want to identify what feels heavy. We want to identify what feels heavy, limited, or outside of your control. Step two is we want to dissolve its feeling of solidity into pure consciousness, right? Seeing it as consciousness only. We want to really edge off the barriers of its separative nature. We want to melt down the details of its distortion. We want to dissolve the feeling of solidity into pure consciousness. And then ultimately, now that it carries no density, we want to feel total perfection, knowing that it has already manifested in the perfect way. This ties into ultimately really what we might call the state of the wish fulfilled. But most of the time, getting into that state without this process isn't as effective. So we want to take the dense thing, we want to eliminate the density we've created around that thing, and then we want to ultimately feel into total perfection. knowing that it has already manifested in the perfect way. And this perspective is coming from realm 0. Ultimately, yes, going back to step 1, for some of those who wanted to, identifying what feels heavy, right? When you think about it, it feels heavy in your body, or it makes you feel limited, or it feels outside of any sense of control. Okay? That's really the first part here. We need to obviously be able to identify it. The second part is we want to dissolve the feeling of solidity into consciousness, right? Dissolving the barriers, dissolving its sense of ultimately really making sure that we are not sitting here perceiving that thing to have life apart from us, right? Dissolving the sense of separative solidity into pure consciousness. And ultimately, knowing now that this thing carries no density, we feel total perfection around that subject specifically, knowing it has already manifested in the perfect way. And ultimately, we want to hold this feeling until all sense of heaviness, resistance, and lack dissolve. And all that remains is the feeling of perfection. But don't worry if you don't have all these down. You are going to be supported over the next 6 weeks in really making sure you nail this process completely. We want to remember that there's nothing as far as meaning outside of your consciousness, and therefore a consciousness of perfection will affect all things in your experience. Nothing as far as meaning being assigned outside of your consciousness. And technically, from a realm 0 perspective, there's nothing outside of consciousness, which is your consciousness. And therefore, maintaining a consciousness of perfection will affect all things. Okay? What we want to do is get into the bending reality technology, which is an audio-based activation that harmonizes your brain to theta brainwaves. The theta waves are ultimately dominant during internal focus, meditation, prayer, and spiritual awareness and experiences. They also stimulate those deeper experiences of oneness and intuitive knowing. In other words, theta waves are a huge doorway to source in the body as far as the 0 density state. What I'm going to do here is get ready for this. All right, good stuff. Just to clarify. All right, we're going to do that there. Good stuff. All right, let me get back into this. I do apologize. I can't wait to do this in person where I'll just have like a clicker, you know what I mean? So theta waves, they're dominant during internal focus, meditation, prayer, spiritual awareness. They also stimulate experiences of oneness and intuitive knowing. In other words, they are the doorway to source. And through a guided voiceover and theta frequencies, the 0 density state is automatically activated in you. Repeat it over and over. Your nervous system then begins to calibrate itself to the 0 density state. So what we want to do is do this activation now. What I'm going to do is ask you to plug in headphones. If you can't hear it now, do not worry. We will send this to everybody, but we're going to make sure to do our best and get you to get this thing going. All right, you've got your headphones in. We are going to get started. This will be about a 10-minute meditation.
Welcome to the 0 density activation, a technology that activates the perfect state of consciousness, where all problems dissolve and all desires manifest perfectly on their own. Let's get started. Close your eyes and take a deep breath in, and breathe out, and breathe in, and breathe out. A few more. In and out. In and out. With each breath, your body becomes lighter, freer, more relaxed. Breathing in and out. And as you go deeper into relaxation, your body begins to dissolve, every atom melting into pure cosmic light, beginning with your feet, then your legs, your torso, all dissolving completely. Continuing with your arms, your neck, and finally your head. You are now completely formless, composed of pure, perfect cosmic light. And as this light expands, it dissolves the world, dissolves the solar system, dissolves the entire universe, leaving you floating as a timeless ocean of pure, perfect, formless light. Cosmic consciousness, infinite intelligence, the source of all existence, your true, perfect nature. And as you radiate this perfection in all directions, all troubles and frustrations are dissolved. All density is dissolved. All effort is dissolved. All responsibility is dissolved. In this perfect cosmic light, only perfection exists. Only perfection is manifested, which includes all your desires. All is perfect. Now hold this feeling of perfection for about 60 seconds, which will harmonize your reality to this perfect vibrational frequency, and I'll return to complete the activation. Take a deep breath in and out. You have now activated the zero density state, a state where all your desires manifest with ease, all is manifesting perfectly, completely, automatically. Notice that no matter what is occurring in the world, this state of perfection is always present. Underneath the density of space, time, and thought. Because perfection is your true nature. Continue your day with this feeling of perfection, knowing all is perfect. And you need not take a single thought for any desire, because all is manifesting on its own.
All right. I invite you to slowly open your eyes. Bring your sensation back to your body. Thank you for participating in this activation with us. Yes, I'm loving this feedback. Again, our goal with this meditation was to take the most sound scientific understanding of the body and understanding theta frequencies, and ultimately what gives us the least amount of mass, right? What makes us feel the lightest, and we came with this, and so I'm very grateful for you. Felt the tapping at the bridge of your nose. So the tapping was inspired by the Silva method. And then we've brought our theta frequencies in. So I can't tell you how much it means to us for you to receive this in this way. It is, in my opinion, this is one of the greatest activations we've done so far. And as far as how many times to use it per day, we're going to get into that here soon. Okay. So I'm going to go back, and if you're still relaxing in your zero density, you're more than welcome to stay there. But we are going to get back into our slides and round this thing out. All right. So here's the protocol for bending reality, right? For dematerialization. We want you to use this meditation. So here's my recommendation, okay? For those of you that use the source meditation currently, I would prioritize this activation that we've done here today, and then supplement it with the source meditation. I've talked with Dave, talked with Jen about this, and while the source meditation is wonderful, this activation should be your focus for the next 6 weeks, obviously, if not longer. So what we want you to do is use the technology at least 2 to 3 times a day. So really, I'm going to encourage you to do it literally the moment you wake up, okay? There's something, you know, and you've probably learned this if you've been deep into self-hypnosis, the first couple seconds of waking up are closest to that theta state. And that is ultimately, it's right before you go to sleep. This is why Neville says a state akin to sleep. And it's right when you wake up is when your subconscious is the most primed for impregnation, right? The more you start doing things and you get on your phone and you start scrolling Instagram, doing all this stuff, you're immediately taking your brain into an alpha beta state, which is where you think, it's where you process, and it's where your conscious mind is the most dominant, not your subconscious mind, right? So you want to use this technology at least 2 to 3 times a day. My first prescriptions are going to be as soon as you wake up and right before you go to bed. It's okay to fall asleep with this. I would honestly encourage it. If you fall asleep with this, you might go to another universe, to be honest with you. Practice feeling perfection as often as possible, right? This is really where we want to go. As you've dove into that activation, you most likely got a taste of that zero density state, that sense where you are limitless, where there's nothing weighing you down, where you are feeling no sense of density at all, right? That is the perfection that we want to return to, right? So practice returning to that feeling of perfection as much as possible. The more you do the meditation and get that spatial awareness locked into your nervous system, the easier it will be to return to that perfection, right? When a desire arises, when it comes upon you, immediately return to the feeling that all is perfect, right? Eating the fruit in Santorini, right? That's going to be our example, our inside joke for that. Immediately returning to the all is perfect allegory, analogy, truth, idea, concept, whatever you want to call it, the spatial awareness of limitlessness. And ultimately, when a thought of lack or limitation, density arises, I want you to perform the dematerialization process, okay? Let me go ahead and do this, make sure that we are on track. Okay, good stuff. All right, just going through my slides so we can make sure we are where we need to be, as we always are, right? Okay. Reality bending protocol. So you know to use it 2 to 3 times a day. Jay, your question was, should it replace meditation? I mean, truthfully, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this really is a meditative activation. And so this can absolutely replace. Now, here's the thing. I will tell you that there's always a benefit to sitting in silence. There's always a benefit. So, you know, maybe it doesn't replace your meditation. I mean, whatever you have apart from this, you can absolutely do, but would recommend this as soon as you wake up, right before you go to bed, okay? And it's really important to understand here that this is a process of recalibrating your nervous system, right? And we experience this with our clients all of the time. When they start to really dive into this, you will experience waves of energetic release. You'll literally feel things come up that may not even be relevant, but they're coming up because they're being released. They're being detached from, they're being really, what I would say, just cut off, so to speak, or transmuted. That might even be a better word here. So ultimately, again, experiencing the wave of energetic release, right? This will be expressed most of the time as maybe emotions, worries, old mental patterns, self-sabotage, and other forms of density. When accessing higher levels of consciousness, we've talked about this, the body is often not acclimated to that level of energy. The mind will want to self-sabotage, okay? When this happens, you need to allow the energy to flow through you. If you don't try to control or suppress the energy, it will release on its own. This is the most important thing. Most of us get caught up in retaining limiting beliefs because we're so focused on trying to get rid of them. And so ultimately, we want to allow the energy to flow through you. If you don't try and control or suppress it, it releases on its own. This is why we want to take the dematerializing protocol whenever some sense of limitation comes up, because in that we are not controlling it. We are not suppressing it. We are simply shifting ourselves in relation to it. And ultimately, as you sit with this and allow your body to process, it will acclimate. Yes, dematerialization protocol is those 4 steps. You can think of it almost like a cleansing of your nervous system, right? A detox of your nervous system. Trapped energy, density, it releases, and your body will need to recalibrate to higher energy levels, especially if you are dealing with ailments that are directly the result of low energy. Many diseases and disorders come as a result of low energy. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be a medical expert, right? But if you think about the word disease, it's literally dis-ease, right? So you can think of the dematerialization process like a cleansing, right? It'll ultimately bring trapped energy to the surface. Now, here's the thing. It's really, really important that you're able to observe this, right? It's really important that you're able to observe this process as it continues to work, and ultimately as you begin to release energy. And when I say observe, I mean observe and not judge. Okay, observe it and not judge it, because these things are going to come to the surface, right? They are things that we may not like about ourselves. Again, that non-attachment, that non-judgment. Yeah, you're right, Rashira. It's literally a spiritual enema. Joe mentioned that he missed how this will physically show again. So let's go back really quickly, right? A lot of the times trapped energy expresses itself as emotions, worries, old mental patterns, self-sabotage, and other density. And ultimately, in every moment when these come up, you're going to have a choice. This is where you reprogram your nervous system, because they will come up and you will have a choice to either engage them as true or go through the dematerialization process to eliminate your sense of density and allow it to perfect itself. As long as I'm trying to mess with it, to control it, I'm not making room, I'm not allowing room for perfection. Perfection doesn't need to be messed with. Perfection doesn't need to be controlled, right? So ultimately, we want to use the technology 2 to 3 times per day. Every time you do, your nervous system becomes a little more acclimated to the 0 density state. And with consistency, this will become your dominant state. And so ultimately, this begins our wrap up of session 4. What a weekend it has been. I can promise you this: if you take this technology and you commit to it 2 to 3 times a day, the dematerialization process, you will see more transformation in the next 6 weeks than you have in the last 6 months. This is what we're committed to. We obviously all want to manifest fast, but the paradox about manifesting fast is acceptance with 0 density. I am tremendously excited for the next 6 weeks. So over the next 6 weeks, you are going to receive support in the Telegram community. And that means we are going to be doing weekly calls with Jennifer, our executive director of coaching, obviously at a tremendously discounted rate. We've never offered any sort of coaching at this rate on this level ever. And so you need to really, that's the thing here. I'm going to tell you this. And honestly, I feel like we build all of our services and products this way. The ball is in your court. How you get results out of this depends on how committed you are. And a lot of the times we see folks, they start strong, right? But halfway through, they die down and they lose commitment. And they come back to us at the end of the 6 weeks. They say, oh my gosh, I totally forgot. I totally spaced. Nobody is coming to save you except for you. And this is the most liberating thing that you could understand, because you are the totality of the universe experiencing itself, and in your choice to commit to this process, you commit to bringing your greatest transformation to light. So I want to thank you for sharing with us, for sitting with us over this weekend. You are in the Telegram group officially. If you have not put in your number to get SMS receipts, please make sure to do so, as we are going to be sending you daily accountability texts that are meant to support your journey here. And for those of you that have been here, and you've been with us for a while, or maybe this was your first retreat and you got a ton out of this, but maybe you want to go deeper, we've developed something very, very specific. And I want to preface this by helping you understand that there is no obligation to do this. We developed a private coaching engagement for the first time ever where we're doing one-on-one work. And this is an offer we're only extending to those of you that are on this call. And what I want to do is have some time to share that with you. Ultimately, what I really want you to think about is where you're at and what your needs are. But ultimately, we've developed a very specific container for you. Those of you that are here, this will not be offered publicly. But what it includes is this. Ultimately, is a one-time per month delimiting session with our executive director of coaches, myself, ultimately going to keep you accountable for identifying specific stories, eliminating density and blocks. We're going to give you a personalized bending reality plan, which is going to be a step-by-step protocol to take what we've learned this weekend and turn it into reality. Ultimately, this is probably the most realistic manifesting plan you've ever developed in your life. You're going to receive a personal accountability coach apart from your delimiting sessions that ultimately is going to be meeting with you occasionally throughout this 3-month engagement to ensure that you achieve your goals. We are going to be providing a somatic healing therapist for you specifically. If you have never done somatic therapy, you are missing out. It is probably one of the greatest things. I told you about some of my sexual abuse over this weekend. Somatic therapy was probably one of the most effective ways for helping me truly release trauma and pain that was locked up in my body. We're also going to be giving you 2 bending health consultations with a licensed health coach that's on our team. Ultimately, what this means is that mental good, we love mental, we love action, we love commitment to zero density states, but we need to make sure our bodies are functioning well. We need to make sure that we've got the room in our bodies to allow the energy that we're wanting to integrate to flow. And this can be digestive, this can be nootropical, this can be about simple body strength, this can be about testosterone, this can be about estrogen, this can be about so many different things that contribute to how you're able to move energy in your body. And ultimately, we're going to be giving you a $100 supplement voucher for our upcoming line of Reality Hacker Mind, Body, Spirit Nutraceuticals, which will involve mushroom supplements like cordyceps, reishi, lion's manes, chaga, nootropics, 5-HTP, brain focus, anxiety formulas, sleep formulas, as well as superfoods to support filling your body with optimal ingredients and making sure that you are functioning well physically so you can smooth out energetically. Also going to include 3 months of daily accountability texts, as well as, for those of you that do not have it, the I Am experience along with the card deck and book. And ultimately what we've done, really tried to make this something that works for everybody. If this doesn't work for you, you don't need to feel bad. But if it does work for you and you're ready to go, ultimately, this is what we're doing for you guys. The total value of everything here is $82.88, but ultimately for all of you here, the price is going to be $3,333, and that can be done upfront or in payment links. But again, I'm not a high pressure salesman, but I know when things are the right fit. So if this is interesting to you, go ahead and reach out to our team. We're going to be sending some links in the Telegram community if you'd like to get on a call with us and see if you are a good fit. At the end of the day, if you're a good fit, awesome. If you're not, I will tell you straight up, because I've had enough experience working in non-win-win situations, and that's all we try to create here. And so what I want to do now is thank you for joining us this weekend. We have had an absolutely amazing time. I am blissed out for the next 6 weeks. And like I've said, I cannot emphasize this enough. The amount of success you get with what we've done here will be directly correlated to how much you commit to the next 6 weeks. Even if you don't take us up on that offer, it's totally fine. We have developed unreal support for you here to make sure that you don't leave us and go buy something from somebody else that is meant to accomplish the same thing. Who's committing to not going to buying from other people for the things that we know we don't need? I am. I want to get what I need, and I want to live my life. I want to build my companies. I want to build my family healthy. I want to release generational cycles. I want to die with 16 family members standing around my bed. I want to create billion-dollar legacies. And if you want to do that with us, let's do it, man. The next 6 weeks, the ball is in your court. The support is here. What we will do is let you know when our group calls will be held. Be sure to look in the Telegram for that information specifically. If you have not received the Telegram information, we will send you that over email so you can join that community. But from myself, from Dave, from Jen, thank you so much. I cannot wait to do this in person. We've got Reality Hacker in-person events coming soon. Hopefully we will launch our first one this year, and I expect all of you to be there. Here's the thing, folks. We are not just a one and done. It's not a hit it and quit it here. We don't believe in that. We're about long-term relationships, baby. Healthy, long-term relationships. So even after the 6 weeks, if you don't get a coaching engagement designed for you, stick around. Join our YouTube community. Join our Instagram community. Stay in the Bending Reality community. I can tell you that you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So what would happen saying this on January 22nd at 2:22 p.m.? What would happen if you spent the next 6 months surrounding yourself with people that were committed to dreaming and living as big as you? And what would happen if you took advantage of the support that we have for you? You're so amazing. You're so loved. You're powerful. You're infinite, which ultimately encapsulates all of that. And if you don't go into this week looking to bring $1 million into your life, I have failed. If you don't go into this week looking and dream storming about the biggest dreams that you have and accessing the zero density state in relation to those dreams, we've not done our job. That's your goal. Go big or don't go at all. You are not here to play small. You are here to live as the infinite consciousness that you are. That it is, man. That it is. You're amazing. You're powerful. You're loved. You're wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and end this recording, and then we will move forward. Just kidding, people that are listening. We're not moving forward into anything.